Hey there, welcome to Sleep with Calm History. Tonight, we invite you into the quieter corners of the past, where the grand halls of history echo not with kings and conquests, but with soft footsteps, folded linens, and the hush of forgotten rooms. This story follows the silent life of a nursemaid tending to an empty nursery in an Edwardian household. The children have grown, the laughter has faded, and yet the room remains exactly as it was. Each detail, dusted toys, polished window panes, folded cloth rabbits, holds the memory of a child who once called it home. So find your most comfortable spot, let the world slow down, and allow the gentle rhythm of the past to carry you toward rest. As you listen, we'd love to know what time is it where you are, and where in the world are you joining us from. Feel free to leave a quiet hello in the comments. Now close your eyes, and let's step gently into the story. You open your eyes not to light, but to cold. Not the sharp, bracing kind that wakes you, but the kind that settles into your bones as if you'd never quite warmed them from the day before. It's 4:30 a.m. in the servants' attic, and there's no candle left to light. No fire has been lit anywhere in the house yet. You dress in the dark, quietly, because even the other maids aren't expected to rise for another half hour. But you, the scullery maid, must be invisible and indispensable. You are the first heartbeat of the house each day, and no one will know it. Your hands already feel raw before they've even touched water. Downstairs, the kitchen is a vault, cold stone underfoot, iron in every direction, and a silence thick with soot and grease. You've come to know every sound this room makes: the groan of the stove's iron door, the soft clink of last night's pans waiting to be scrubbed, the quiet rebellion of the back window that never shuts properly. It's still dark out, and already you're on your knees before the fire grate, scraping out yesterday's ashes, your breath coming in soft clouds. The range must be lit before cook comes in. She expects it glowing, ready, without question. She'll sweep in with her apron stiff as armor and demand order eggs and coffee, without so much as a glance at you. That is the order of things. You know it well, so you arrange the kindling with trembling fingers, striking the flint with quiet urgency. You pray it catches. If it doesn't, you'll lose 5 precious minutes and risk cook's temper. It catches. A soft glow. You let your shoulders drop for half a second, and then rise again. The copper pots are waiting. There are rules you follow, though they've never been spoken aloud. Scrub in circles. Scald with boiling water. Never let grease touch the towel. Clean the servants' hall table before the others come. Boil water for the footman's shaving. Polish the boots even if they're not worn that day. Everything must shine before it's seen. You are never the last one to finish a task, and never the first one noticed. You are, in the purest sense, background labor. By the time the kitchen maid comes in at 6 o'clock, your hands are pruned and numb. You've lit the range, boiled the morning water, scrubbed the pans from last night's roast, polished the silver soup ladle, swept the ash, and laid out the breakfast trays. She nods at you, a tiny flicker of acknowledgement. That's all. You've earned your invisibility, and yet sometimes, briefly, you see yourself in the faint shimmer of the copper pan, in the warped reflection of the kettle. You notice the loose strand of hair escaping your cap, or the smudge of soot on your cheek, and you remember that you are a person. Then it passes, like the morning frost. At breakfast you hear the bells. Not the bells for you, those will come later. These are the upstairs bells, summoning footmen and parlour maids. The scullery maid does not get summoned. You are the one who scrubs the floor after others have carried the trays away. You are the one who empties the chamber pots brought down by hands better dressed than yours. You are the one who scours the kitchen steps, sometimes twice, because a guest's boots tracked through them on accident. You often wonder how many hours pass between the first spark of the range and the last dish you'll scrub that night. You know the answer, of course. Nearly 18. 18 hours of standing, bending, hauling, carrying, wiping, polishing, boiling, fetching. 18 hours where your name is barely used and your voice is rarely heard. You are 16, and you've already forgotten what it felt like to sleep past dawn. In the mid-morning light, there's a brief lull. Cook is busy berating the butcher's delivery boy. The housemaids have taken over the breakfast dishes. You sneak a moment by the back door. The sun hasn't yet reached the servants' courtyard, but the air is alive with the smell of coal smoke, dew and distant roses from the garden. You're not allowed to walk through. You wonder what it looks like, those neat flower beds trimmed by the gardener, whose name you don't know. You wonder what it would feel like to stand in the sun, instead of beneath the weight of someone else's timetable. Then the door to the larder creaks, and you are back again, back to peeling potatoes, rinsing cabbage, darning a torn cloth, and preparing for luncheon. You are always preparing. The next task looms before the current one ends. Evening brings no rest. It brings the afterglow of roast joints, and saucepans crusted with fat. It brings spilled gravy, and the smell of burnt onions. It brings the boots of gentlemen, left muddy by the hunt, to be scrubbed clean and gleaming before morning. You work until your fingers throb, until the lantern flickers low, and until the only sound left in the kitchen is the echo of your own breath. Sometimes as you climb back up the attic stairs, you wonder how long you'll last. You've heard of girls who fainted at the sink, girls who ran away, girls who were sent packing for being too slow or too loud. You don't want to be any of them, you just want to be useful. Quietly, invisibly useful. And as you fall asleep that night, the ache in your hands is joined by a single question. Is this what the rest of your life will feel like, or is there ever a way out of the scullery? You wake again in darkness, but today it feels heavier, not just the usual weight of morning, but something deeper, an ache behind the eyes, a stiffness in the shoulders that hasn't eased overnight. The attic is as still as ever, with only the creak of the floorboards below, suggesting that perhaps the under-housemaid is already up. You hurry, because lateness has no place in your world. A single mistake, a single delay, and the chain of duty unravels. Downstairs, the kitchen greets you with its familiar cold. It's not just physical, it's a silence that absorbs warmth. The range has gone out during the night, and panic rises in your chest. You kneel at once, raking through old ashes to make space for kindling. Your fingers are clumsy from sleep, but urgency wakes them. A bad start spreads through the day, like ink on linen. You strike the flint 3 times before it sparks. You do not cry with relief, but your breath shudders when the flame catches. Cook arrives not long after. She does not look at you, but she notices everything. Her silence means the range is acceptable. She begins barking orders at the kitchen maid, who winces at the tone. You stay silent, collecting eggs from the pantry, inspecting them for cracks. You do this by candlelight still, and you know which shelf has the wobble, and which pan leaks if tilted. These are your daily companions. Unrewarded knowledge, invisible skill. You scrub vegetables in the scullery sink. Parsnips today, caked in yesterday's frost. Your fingernails have long since stopped growing properly. The skin of your hand stays red, cracked, raw, no balm, no glove, no pause. In the corner is the grease trap, which you must empty later. It smells of days-old lard and boiled bones. No one thanks you for it. It is simply understood that someone must bear the worst parts of the house. By mid-morning, the rhythms of the house begin to thrum in full. Bells ring. Footsteps echo above. Someone has dropped a tray upstairs. It sounds like broken china. You keep your head down, slicing bread for tea trays. The knife is dull. Your wrist aches from pressing. You ask for a replacement blade only once. Cook doesn't reply. You understand that this too is your fault. A sharper knife might wait another month. Once you caught sight of the lady of the house on the stairs. Her slippers were trimmed with pale silk, and she had a white dog in her arms. She didn't see you, not really. Her gaze slid across your figure like fog on a window pane. For a second you imagined trading places, what it might be like to wake in a warm room, with your hair combed by someone else, your breakfast prepared by invisible hands. You felt ashamed afterward for thinking it. That kind of fantasy has no place here. Luncheon is the worst part of the day. The rush to prepare, the weight of the trays, the scolding of the pots. Cook's temper grows sharpest then, slicing through the air with words that burn more than the stove. You keep moving, keep lifting, keep wiping. At one point you feel dizzy, and grip the counter's edge. The kitchen maid glances at you, then away. There's no room for weakness when the roast must be basted. You don't sit down until the sun is low, and even then, it's not rest. It's peeling the skins from cold potatoes for tomorrow. It's sorting coal. It's rinsing out the cloths used to polish boots. You think sometimes of the world outside the estate walls, of streets and shops, and voices that don't belong to employers. You think of the city where your brother works in a printing shop. He earns half your wage but keeps it all. You send most of yours back home. At dusk the kitchen changes. The light softens, the clatter slows, even Cook's voice grows less sharp, wearied from the day. You clean the sink for the second time. The floor gets mopped again, always again. Nothing is ever done. It is only cleaned until dirt returns. The house above begins to settle into its evening rhythms. A guest is expected tomorrow. That means extra silver to polish, extra boots to clean, and more tension than usual. You know this guest's name. You've overheard the upstairs maid speak of him in a hushed tone. He is titled. He may be looking for a wife. All the girls in the house except you speculate about the dress the lady might wear. You only wonder what he'll leave behind on his plate, and if you'll be the one to scrape it into the slop bucket. Tonight, as you lay your apron across the stool, you notice a tear at the hem. It must be mended before the next morning. If it's seen, it will be your carelessness. If you fix it quietly, no one will ever know. So you take it upstairs with your candle, needle in hand. You sit on the edge of your cot and stitch in silence. The wax burns low. The dormitory is still. No one snores yet. Outside, the wind brushes against the window pane, like an old memory trying to get back in. You think of your mother, of how she scrubbed laundry in the village before she fell ill. You wonder if she would recognize you now, bent like her, hands ruined like hers. You promised her this job would lead to something better, but what if this is all there is? You look down at your stitched apron, and feel the question rise again. How long before your hands forget softness, and all you remember is labor? The morning of the guest's arrival begins with ice on the scullery floor. A thin, sharp sheet clinging to the stone, waiting to surprise your bare soles, as you cross in haste to reach the range. You carry a pail of water so cold it stings like pins against your wrists. It's only after pouring it into the basin that you realize your thumb has split again from yesterday's scrubbing. You wrap it quickly with a strip of cloth torn from your own hem. Quiet injuries are best handled alone. The kitchen is already humming. Cook has been up earlier than usual. A pheasant hangs beside the pantry door, feathers still speckled with dew. A large ham has been pulled from the brine, and pies are already half assembled on the table. The air smells of raw meat, flour, and the faintest edge of burnt toast. Everything must be perfect today. Not for you, not for Cook, but for the eyes and mouths that will never see below stairs. Your first task is polishing the copper pans. You scrub until your arms tremble. You hold the pan at just the right angle to check your reflection, not to admire it, but to make sure no streaks remain. You have come to measure success in silence. If no one says anything, you have done well. The scullery maid only hears her name when something has gone wrong. Upstairs the guest has arrived. You know by the sudden flurry of movement, the footman's boots pounding the staircase, the bell in the drawing room ringing twice, the sound of a horse being led away from the carriage. You see none of it. You are rinsing greens and cutting bread crusts, your hands moving faster now because the lunch hour approaches. By noon the kitchen is a whirlwind. Steam rises from every pot. The pudding must be watched. The sauce must not curdle. Cook barks her orders with the precision of a general. You dart between tasks, catching a falling spoon before it clatters, swapping a cracked bowl before it's noticed. You burn your hand on a tray. There's no time to treat it. You soak it in cold water between chores, and say nothing. When the dining bell rings, the trays are lifted and carried away. You do not follow them. You only wait for them to return, smeared, emptied, dropped at odd angles on the stone counter. You begin the cleaning before all the plates are back. There is no rest. The silver must shine before dinner. The glasses must be checked for spots. The floors must be swept again and again, though no one ever seems to notice the dirt they bring in. Afternoon comes with a strange hush. Upstairs is quieter now. The guest and the family are out walking the grounds. You steal a moment by the back door, again watching your breath rise in the cold air. You wonder if the guest saw the garden, if he admired the roses. You will never know. You are not to be seen when gentlemen pass. You remember your sister's letter, arrived last week, now folded and hidden in your apron pocket. She writes about the dressmaker's shop where she's begun work. She gets to sit while she sews. She takes tea at 3 p.m. You wonder if she knows how long it's been since you had a cup that wasn't left over from someone else's tray. You miss her, but more than that, you envy her. She has stories to tell. You have tasks to finish. By evening your muscles ache in places that no longer surprise you. There's a tear in your stocking. Your back has a dull, stubborn throb. You still have to clean the stove. The roast has left its mark, grease hardened in the corners, drippings blackened at the edges. You scrub it in circles, just as you were taught, until your hands blur into the metal. After supper, the guest departs. You hear the wheels of the carriage on gravel. The footman mutters about the weight of the trunk. You don't look up from your scrubbing. The world moves above your head, always out of reach, always just noise. A slammed door, a distant laugh, a cough in the corridor. Tonight as you climb the stairs to your attic room, your legs threaten to give out. The candle flickers low in its holder. The other maids are already asleep, one of them snoring softly. You remove your apron, hang it neatly, and sit on the edge of the bed. You take out your sister's letter, and read it again by candlelight. You trace the words with your unbandaged hand, and imagine her voice. The wind outside howls faintly through the attic slats. You lie down, wrapping the thin blanket around your aching frame. Your thumb pulses where the skin split earlier. Your knees bruise against the cot's wooden edge. But sleep comes, not because you are at peace, but because exhaustion takes you the moment your eyes close. And just before darkness claims you, you think, what would it be like to live a day that wasn't decided for you by bells? You rise precisely at 6, not because anyone tells you to, but because habit is stronger than sleep. The room is dark, the floor cold beneath your slippers, but you move with the calm precision of someone long practiced in waking before anyone else. Your clothing is laid out the night before, pressed immaculate, with cuffs already buttoned and shoes polished to a mirror's gleam. A butler is never caught unready. You are the clockwork of the house, and any misstep in your routine would echo far beyond your own silence. The butler's pantry is narrow, tucked behind the grand staircase where no guest would ever find it. Your desk sits at the corner, cluttered with small ledgers and delivery books, Receipts neatly stacked beside the inkwell. You check the house keys, numbered, aligned, each one returned to its place the night before. You run a gloved finger along the ledger spine. Nothing is out of place. Nothing ever is. By 7 the kitchen is already active. You pass through, silent as a shadow. Cook glances up, gives the smallest nod. She knows her place and knows yours. You do not interfere below stairs, but you are aware of everything. The eggs arrived late yesterday. The meat from the butcher was half frozen. The youngest footman scuffed the hall runner after polishing. These things are not spoken. But you remember, a good butler keeps a quiet ledger not only in his books but in his mind. You supervise the footman with a raised eyebrow and a lowered tone. A glance is all it takes to correct a crooked collar or a missed button. You walk the halls not like a servant, but like the memory of order itself. The house breathes through you. You ensure its lungs are full and its posture perfect. Upstairs, the master of the house stirs late as usual. He has guests this week, old school friends with long names and short tempers. They like their brandy after breakfast and their boots buffed to military shine. You arrange their cigars, set the drawing room fire, ensure the bell cords are tested. When they ring, you must answer. Always the butler, never the bell. At 8 you review the day's menu with the housekeeper. She's a sharp woman, and the two of you speak little. There's an understanding. You manage above stairs, she below, but it is you who reads the face of the mistress to see whether she is pleased with the linens. You who adjust the wine order before she notices the sherry is low. You who ensures no footman ever knocks twice. You are the guardian of appearances. The family dines in elegance because you direct the staging. The silverware gleams because you inspect it before the parlour maid sets the table. The flowers in the drawing room match the season because you remember the gardener's rotation better than he does. You walk through the house like a ghost with gloves. Always there, never seen. At luncheon you oversee the procession of dishes. You stand at the doorway, not participating, not quite watching, but ensuring that every gesture is timed, every dish placed with precision. The guest makes a joke about servants not hearing. You smile slightly. You hear everything. You always have. In the afternoon, the master meets privately with a solicitor. You prepare the room, place the decanter just so, close the door behind them. You remain outside, polishing the sideboard, appearing to be elsewhere. But you catch fragments, the mention of a will, a tension in voices. You hear enough. You always do, and yet you say nothing. You once knew a butler who spoke too much. He was dismissed within the hour. Another who corrected a guest's assumption. He was removed without reference. A butler's power lies in what he never says. Your silence is your strongest suit. It protects the household. It protects you. Evening comes with its own choreography. You oversee the lighting of the lamps. The drawing room curtains are drawn. The fire crackles. The family gathers. You ensure that the brandy is warm, the cigars cut, the clocks ticking softened by thick carpet. You nod at the housekeeper and she releases the parlour maids to begin the supper service. Later you lock the wine cellar. You count the bottles in your head before turning the key. You note that the guest in room 4 left muddy footprints across the Persian rug. You will mention it to no one, but you will polish the spot clean by morning. Before bed you write in your private journal, not the official ledger but the one you keep in the drawer behind the tea caddy. You write nothing dramatic, just details. A broken vase, a missing brooch, a whispered conversation caught by accident. You don't know why you write them. Perhaps one day they will matter. As the clock chimes 10, the house grows still. You make your rounds as you always do, checking windows, testing locks, straightening rugs. You are the last one to see the house whole before it sleeps. And as you return to your pantry room, coat removed, waistcoat hung, you wonder how much longer can you carry the secrets of this house before one demands to be told. The next morning begins with rain. You hear it before you see it, soft against the upper windows, a sound that will darken the house and dampen tempers. Rain changes things. It changes moods, routines, the angle of the light in the hallway. It soaks through coats and muddies boots and sharpens the complaints of guests trapped indoors. You prepare accordingly. You've already lit the fireplaces in 3 drawing rooms before breakfast. The logs had been stacked by the footman, but you rearranged them. They stack too tightly. You know how flames breathe. The footmen do not. You check the matches in the silver case by the hearth. One is wet. You remove it and replace the entire box. Everything must appear untouched and perfect. That is the butler's paradox, working tirelessly so the work cannot be seen. The footmen are late polishing the silver. You notice immediately. You say nothing until after breakfast, when they gather for direction. You correct the younger one's tie, point to a missed spot on the candelabra, and let the moment pass. But he knows. They all know. You do not raise your voice. You lower your tolerance. In the dining room, the mistress is displeased with the breakfast marmalade. You hear the complaint through the door passed from her to the housekeeper, and then to cook. It wasn't bitter enough. Too sweet, she says. You do not intervene. You will, however, quietly reorder the usual Seville oranges yourself tomorrow. You will inspect the next batch when it arrives. Your job is not to interfere, it is to preempt. At 11, a letter arrives. The master receives it in his study. You do not read private letters, but you note the seal. You sense his mood shift from the way he sets the letter down, not flat but with the corner hanging slightly off the desk. You hear the decanter pour earlier than usual. When he emerges, he says nothing. He asks for his hat. You place it in his hand, and he walks out into the rain, without an umbrella. You watch him from the window until he disappears down the gravel path. By noon the servants begin murmuring. They heard a raised voice in the study, which they never do. The lady of the house was seen leaving the room quickly, one hand clutching a handkerchief, the other pressed to her temple. You maintain your silence. You know already that the solicitor is due again this evening. You arranged the visit yesterday. Nothing is coincidence in this house. Everything is observed. The visiting guests stay longer than expected. One of them has taken a shine to the youngest parlour maid. You see it in the way he lingers by the breakfast table, asks for hot water twice, requests extra toast just as she walks by. You say nothing, but later you adjust the assignment roster so that another maid serves that wing. You do not mention it. You protect the household even from itself. In the afternoon, the master returns. His boots are soaked. His face is pale. He says nothing as you remove his coat. You take it, hang it, brush the shoulders without asking. You do not ask about the letter, about the missing umbrella, about the shaking in his fingers. You do not ask if he saw someone. You simply offer him tea. He declines. He walks upstairs slowly, as if carrying something heavy that no one can see. You adjust the evening plans. Dinner will be smaller. No guests, no formality. You inform the housekeeper, quietly, away from the kitchen staff. The cook is furious, of course. Several dishes must be postponed, rearranged, repurposed, but you absorb the complaint. That is what you do. You absorb the pressure that would otherwise collapse the house. Later you walk the upstairs hallway. You notice something strange. The door to the family library is slightly ajar. It's never left that way. You glance in as you pass. The books have not been touched, but a decanter is missing from the cabinet. The glass is not out. The master did not drink in there. He took it elsewhere. You note it. You add it to the mental record you will never share. Before supper you review the pantry again. There is a letter tucked in one of the ledgers, placed as if by accident. You recognize the housekeeper's handwriting. A note for you. It simply says, "Did you notice her wrist?" No name, but you know who she means. You nod to yourself alone and fold the paper into your pocket. The lady of the house appears for supper late. She wears long sleeves, though the drawing room is warm. She does not speak much. She touches her wine glass but never drinks. The atmosphere is heavy. One of the children makes a joke. She smiles, but it looks borrowed. You remain standing at the sideboard, invisible, and present. Every detail enters your archive. You are not gossip. You are memory. When the evening ends, you check the locks again. One of the windows in the study is ajar, not broken but left open too long. You close it quietly. You hear the master's footsteps upstairs. You wait until all is still. Back in your pantry room, you take out your private journal. You do not write about bruises or silence or glances. You write the facts. The letter, the missed cigar, the changed seating arrangement. You do not speculate. You preserve. And as the candle flickers low, you pause with your pen hovering over the last line. You consider writing what you suspect. But you stop, because the butler is not a confessor. The butler is the witness. And as you set your pen down, you wonder, how long can a house hide what it refuses to name before someone leaves a door too far open? The morning after the solicitor's visit is unusually quiet. The rain has stopped, leaving the estate soaked and glistening, its hedges heavy with droplets and the gravel path veined with dark, damp lines. You rise at the same hour as always. Routine does not waver in this house, even when something beneath it has begun to shift. You feel it in the way the footmen whisper too softly, in the drawn look of the housekeeper as she passes you the key to the wine cellar without a word. You begin your inspections as usual: parlor, dining room, study. Nothing out of place, but everything feels slightly off. A fire not fully built, a footman too quick with his bow, a parlor maid with red-rimmed eyes. You don't ask, you note. You arrange. You correct. A napkin is refolded, a clock rewound, a tray redirected. Order, you remind yourself, is what holds a house together when its people begin to come apart. At breakfast the master arrives late. Not visibly altered, not sloppy or disheveled, but quieter, more deliberate. He says little. The mistress does not join him. No explanation is given. The second footman pours the tea with a trembling hand, and you quietly take the pot from him mid-pour. He steps back. You finish the task without incident. After the master departs, you turn to the footman and suggest he polish the candlesticks in the west parlor. He nods, grateful for the dismissal. You know when to offer grace without words. Later, a package arrives, small, wrapped in heavy brown paper. The address is printed in a hand you do not recognize, and the return address is missing. You carry it to the master's study. He is inside already, though the clock reads only 11. You knock once and wait. His enter is faint. You hand it over. He takes it, pauses, and looks at you as if he might say something, but doesn't. You close the door behind you without a word. The mistress descends for luncheon, arm in arm with the governess. Her smile is steady, but her eyes search the room with too much effort, as if ensuring the world has not changed while she looked away. You offer her the day's menu. She waves it off. Whatever is simplest, she says. You know what that means. No sauces, no courses, no comment. You instruct the cook accordingly. In the afternoon, one of the older housemaids asks to speak to you privately. A rare request. You lead her to the butler's pantry, close the door, and wait. She tells you that one of the upstairs rooms had a broken teacup under the dressing table. Shards. Hidden. Not reported. She cleaned it without saying anything, but the blood on the edge of the cloth unsettled her. She doesn't ask what happened. She just wanted you to know. You nod once and thank her. She leaves quickly. You return to the ledgers but can't focus. You take out the journal. You write only one line: second teacup incident. Same wing. You close the book. You do not speculate, but the pages are beginning to fill more quickly. Evening falls early in the winter season. The family does not dress for dinner.
The guest rooms remain empty. The children are sent to bed before the final bell. There are no cigars in the drawing room. The parlour maids wait for instruction. You tell them to clear the table without service. One looks surprised, but says nothing. You oversee every plate, every glass, making sure no sharp edge remains, just in case. Later in the main corridor, you pass the master. He stops for a moment. His face is unreadable. "You've been here a long time," he says. You nod. "Yes, sir." He doesn't respond at first, then offers, almost reluctantly, "I hope you find the work still meaningful." You hold his gaze with practiced neutrality. "It is my duty, sir." That is all he needs to hear. He nods once, and walks away. At night you make your final rounds. You notice the lady's door is open a crack. You knock gently before approaching. No reply. Inside, the room is neat, untouched. A single candle has burned low. A scarf is left draped across the chair. On the writing desk, a note is half written. The pen still uncapped beside it. You don't read the note. You simply cap the pen, fold the page, and leave it where it is. You draw the curtains and dim the lamp. Some things are better left unread until the morning. Back in your pantry, you add only a brief entry. Study decanter replaced. Letter unopened on desk. Broken cup confirmed. Master's question noted. And then, as the fire dies and the house finally settles into its unnatural hush, you sit in your chair and let the silence settle around you. You know more than they think. You always have. You are the holder of the unsaid, the protector of appearances, the memory of every unspoken thing. And still, you ask yourself, what would happen if just once the butler did speak?
You begin in silence. The kind of silence that blankets early morning halls before the house wakes, when the only sound is the distant clatter of the kitchen range being stoked below. You carry your duster like a soldier with a rifle, held firm, never dragging. You have 1 hour before the family enters the drawing room for their morning tea, and in that hour you must erase every sign that the room has ever been lived in. The drawing room is the heart of the Edwardian household's performance. It is where the family hosts visitors, reads aloud, plays the pianoforte, discusses imperial politics, and pretends that nothing in the world beyond the estate can ever touch them. And your job as the second housemaid is to keep that performance immaculate. The first challenge is the fireplace. Always the fireplace. Ash creeps back overnight like a ghost, no matter how well the footman cleans it. Bits of char fall from the grate. Soot clings to the inside lip, threatening to streak the cream-colored rug. You kneel first thing each day, brushing it with a small horsehair tool that you've named in your head, though you've never said its name aloud. You speak very little during your shift. Dust, after all, has no ears. Next is the brass. The andirons must gleam. Not merely shine, but gleam, like gold viewed through candlelight. You polish them in slow circular motions, counting the revolutions until your wrist cramps. You do not stop. You cannot. The mistress once noticed a single fingerprint and summoned the housekeeper to her side. She never raised her voice, but she didn't need to. The silence that followed was heavier than any scolding. Then the piano. The keys are off limits unless being cleaned, and even then you must use a barely damp cloth, never wet. Moisture warps ivory. You wipe them one by one, watching your reflection shimmer back in each curved surface. You do not play, but sometimes you wonder what it would feel like to press a note on purpose. You've heard the daughter of the house playing Debussy. Once she left the sheet music open. You stared at the page, not reading the notes, but the silence between them. The mantelpiece is always last. It's the most delicate and the most dangerous. The vases are narrow, made of porcelain thin as eggshell. The frames hold oil portraits of long-dead ancestors with eyes that seem to judge your grip. You dust around them with a trembling touch. The housekeeper warned you on your first day Break one thing, and your wages go to replace it. You've earned 3 months already, and have broken nothing. You plan to keep it that way. You never sit. Not once. The room has 7 chairs and 2 divans, but not one has ever touched the back of your uniform. You do not rest against the mantel, though your legs ache. You do not lean into the wall, though your spine screams for relief. You dust, you polish, you rearrange the tea table for the 3rd time because the angle of the tray looks slightly wrong. At precisely 9, you hear the bell from upstairs. That's your cue to vanish. You fold your cloth, tuck the brush into your apron, and exit through the servant's door so that the mistress can enter 5 minutes later and pretend the room has always looked that way, that it simply exists, perfect and preserved, untouched by labor or time. But the truth is, the room is alive. It breathes dust into its corners. It collects ash like a secret. It shifts ever so slightly each day. Flowers droop, books lean, carpets wrinkle, and yet you must return it to stillness. Your job is not cleaning. Your job is erasure. After the drawing room, you move to the library. It is easier somehow, less performative. The master reads alone most mornings. He notices the state of his desk, but not the polish on the windows. You dust the shelves from top to bottom, careful not to disturb the dog-eared pages of books left open. You never move a bookmark. You learned that mistake early. Sometimes in that quiet library you forget yourself. You find your eyes drawn to titles you cannot pronounce. Once you ran your fingers along the spine of a volume on Greek tragedies. You didn't open it, but you imagined the words waiting inside. You told no one, not because it was wrong, but because it was yours, that moment. The bell rings again. The drawing room has been used. There's a spill, a broken biscuit, a smudge on the decanter tray. You return quickly, unseen, sliding in through the back hall. The mistress has stepped out. You see her empty teacup, a lipstick stain on the rim. You wipe it clean without a thought, and as you kneel once more to adjust the fire screen, you glance into the small mirror hanging above the hearth. You catch your own reflection, just your eyes peeking out from beneath your cap. You hold that gaze for a breath longer than usual, and you wonder when you polish away every trace of others, what parts of yourself are you dusting away too? By now you know how the room speaks, not with sound, but with subtle changes, creases in the drapery, misplaced tassels, the faintest scatter of ash near the grate. Each morning you find yourself returning to it like a ritual, not to be noticed, but to prevent notice. It's a strange kind of power, the one you hold to erase without a trace, to maintain the illusion that this room never changes, that time does not touch it, nor toil disturb it. The windows are next. They don't open often, too many curtains, too many worries about drafts, but their sills gather dust all the same. You wipe them slowly, following the grooves in the wood with a steady hand. You work from left to right, always in the same pattern. You found the groove on the 3rd window where the pane rattles slightly when the wind picks up. You wedge a small scrap of cloth inside when no one is looking. The butler once asked who fixed it. You said nothing. He nodded all the same. As the day progresses, the drawing room becomes a place of transition. Servants pass by to deliver or collect. The footman brings in trays. The parlour maid arranges flowers. The housekeeper checks the settee for lint. But you are the one who lingers, unnoticed, longer than the rest. You have memorized every inch of this room. You know which floorboard creaks, if stepped on from the left, which table leg wobbles, which vase sits slightly off-center because the carpet beneath it is uneven. You know these things not because anyone told you, but because the room told you, and you listened. This afternoon, the mistress entertains guests. 3 ladies arrive, coats trimmed with fur, and voices high with chatter. You watch them enter from the hall, your hand still on the edge of a tea tray. You see their eyes flicker across the room, assessing, approving, assuming.
One of them brushes a gloved hand along the arm of the chair you polished this morning. She smiles. You say nothing. You are not in the room, though you never left. While the ladies sip tea and compliment the carpet, you stand just behind the door, ready, always ready. The parlour maid stumbles briefly. She nearly knocks the sugar bowl with her sleeve. You catch it before it tips, placing it back with practiced calm. She whispers a thank you when the door closes behind them. You nod. You do not scold her. You remember your first week, the time you left lint on the curtain. The housekeeper noticed. You scrubbed every curtain in the west wing as penance. In quieter hours, you dust the paintings, always gently, always with the same soft brush. The portraits above the mantel are the trickiest. Their eyes seem to follow you as you work. One shows a distant relative in military uniform. You've heard he died young, somewhere in Africa. The mistress never speaks of him. You wonder if she even notices when his frame is crooked. You always straighten it. You once asked the older housemaid why the drawing room mattered so much. She smiled and said, "Because it's not really for them, it's for who they want to be." You didn't understand at the time. Now you do. The drawing room is performance, posture, proof. It is the face the house shows to the world. Your job is to apply the powder and fix the smile. Evenings are the most delicate. The light shifts, shadows stretch long across the floor. The fire burns lower, softer. The room grows quieter, but never fully still. Someone always lingers, a guest with a cigar, a child with a book, the mistress writing letters by the window. You hover at the edges, adjusting pillows, folding throws, dusting away crumbs, with a cloth so thin it nearly vanishes in your hand. Tonight the master sits alone by the fire. He says nothing when you enter. You move quietly, polishing the sideboard, resetting the chess pieces he disturbed earlier. He lifts his glass, sips, stares into the flames. The silence hangs heavy, not oppressive, but waiting. When you turn to leave, he speaks, just once. You keep it looking the same every day. You pause, unsure if he expects a reply. That takes more effort than anyone thinks, he adds, almost to himself. You nod. He doesn't look at you. You leave. Upstairs the hallway is dim. You pass the housekeeper on her rounds. She hands you a fresh duster without speaking. You tuck it into your apron and return to your attic room. There's no fire there, just a single candle flickering in its jar. You sit on your cot and stare at your palms, dry, cracked, sore. You flex your fingers. They ache. You stretch your back. It tightens. You wonder if you could ever visit a drawing room and see only its beauty, not its maintenance. And you ask yourself how much of your life has been spent making sure others never see what you see every day. The first thing you notice is the smell, faint lavender, the scent of yesterday's parlor spray still lingering in the corners. The drawing room always begins this way, even before the fire is lit. You enter with a cloth folded neatly in your apron and a brush in your hand, the same way you have for months. The season is changing now. The days are shorter. The sun hits the windows at a lower angle, which means more light on the brass, more fingerprints exposed, more vigilance required. Today the mistress has guests again, and with guests come expectations. You start at the baseboards. No one notices baseboards unless they're dusty, then they notice too much. You work clockwise. You always do. It helps you keep track of what's been touched. You glance at the clock. 40 minutes until the family comes down. Enough time, but only just. The fire must be stoked. The ash swept. The newspapers arranged on the side table. Oldest on top, ironed to remove the creases. Even though no one ever thanks you for the smooth pages. The chairs have been shifted again. Someone must have sat reading by the window last night, leaving a faint impression in the cushion. You pat it gently, smoothing the fabric, checking for crumbs. There are always crumbs, somewhere tucked in the corners, just beyond the eye of anyone who doesn't bend as low as you do. You kneel, brush in hand, reaching beneath the settee, with fingers trained to find the things no one else thinks to look for. A hairpin, a coin, a scrap of torn paper. You set them all aside, evidence of use, evidence of presence. You move next to the bookshelf. The top shelf collects the most dust. No one ever reads the books there, but they're always on display. The leather is cracked on some of the spines. You dust them slowly, not because they matter, but because their neglect matters. The mistress once remarked to a guest that this room practically cleans itself. You were just outside the door when she said it. You smiled at the irony. You didn't correct her. Of course not. The guests arrive early. You hear their voices before you see them, bright clipped tones echoing through the front hall. You slip into the side corridor and wait. The parlor maid rushes past, carrying the silver tray with sherry glasses. You nod. She nods back. It's understood now. You prepare the stage. She performs. Neither of you applauded. Once the guests are inside, you return to the drawing room. Later, after they've left, the air is heavier, then thick with perfume, smoke, the scent of overripe grapes left too long in the fruit bowl. The cushions are askew. A vase has been moved. A single glass ring stains the edge of the mahogany table. You exhale and begin again. There's a satisfaction in the restoration, not pride. Pride is dangerous in service, but a quiet rhythm. You know the weight of each frame, the give of each hinge, the texture of every corner. The drawing room is yours more than it is theirs, though they'd never admit it. You've known its moods longer than the mistress's guests. You've watched the curtains fade slowly in the sun. You've seen the rug wear thin in the path between the fireplace and the armchair. You've counted the tiny chips in the marble mantel, though no one else ever has. Evening comes early in autumn. The fire is lit again, and you settle the grate just so. You step back, checking the reflection in the mirror. It's straight. The room is quiet, not empty, but held in perfect stillness, the way they like it, the way you've made it. Later, as you finish your shift, you pass the housekeeper. She hands you the weekly linen count. You take it without question. The drawing room fades behind you. Tomorrow, you'll be back. In your room you sit on the edge of your bed, feet throbbing. You unclasp your apron and fold it carefully, like always. The cloth inside still smells faintly of polish. You place it on the dresser, beside your comb. Your hands are red from the day's scrubbing. You flex your fingers, sore but steady, and as you lie down, staring at the ceiling, the silence presses in, deeper than before. You wonder just for a moment if the drawing room remembers you the way you remember it, or if it too forgets once the dust settles.
You've walked the corridors of this house for over 20 years, and yet they never truly belong to you. You know every threadbare patch of carpet, every uneven floorboard that gives itself away with a creak, every window whose latch sticks when it rains. But your name is not carved anywhere here. It never will be. You are the under-housekeeper, a title that lies somewhere between visible and forgotten, senior enough to be known, but not high enough to be remembered beyond the back stairs. Your day begins just before the others, not because you must scrub or boil or polish, but because someone must check that the others have done all those things correctly. The housekeeper trusts you with that. She no longer inspects the maid's quarters herself. That's your job now. You step quietly through the attic hall, tapping on doors if they're not yet open, listening for the shuffle of feet, the rustle of uniforms being fastened in the dark. You never raise your voice. You never need to. Disappointment travels faster when spoken in quiet tones. The housekeeper has her own staircase, her own quarters, and her own tea service brought by a kitchen maid. You, however, take your tea standing in the corridor, next to the linen room. There's no seat for you in the pantry, and none expected in the parlor. You exist between spaces respected, but not welcomed, trusted but not invited. Your first task each day is the linen count. Towels, napkins, bedsheets, tablecloths, all recorded in the small book you carry in your apron pocket. You make your way through the back halls, pausing to inspect each laundry basket left by the scullery maid. You lift, sniff, unfold, fold again. You note a tear in one pillowcase, a stubborn stain on a hem. These are added to the list. Later the laundry girl will be summoned, not to be scolded, just reminded. You do not believe in scolding. You believe in remembering. Mid-morning brings you to the storerooms. Candles, soap, polish, starch, all accounted for, all precisely labeled. You reorganize the polished tins because someone has placed them out of alphabetical order. A small rebellion perhaps, or just fatigue. Still, it matters. Order matters. It's what keeps the house running. Not just the grand rooms, but the machine beneath, the cellar, the laundry, the pantry, the people. You pass a new maid in the hallway. She nods too quickly. Her cap is slightly askew. You make a note to speak with her later, not to correct her posture, but to remind her that posture is armor. In this house, even a glance from the wrong person can unravel you. You learned that years ago the hard way. When the butler once ignored your request for an extra table setting, the housekeeper asked you why you hadn't insisted. You said you didn't want to press. She looked at you flatly and replied, "Then you don't want to stay." After luncheon, you oversee the airing of the upper rooms. The guests have gone. Sheets must be changed, windows opened, rugs beaten. You do not perform these tasks yourself, not anymore, but you watch, you guide, you inspect. A chambermaid forgets to dust behind the lamp base. You say nothing at first, but after the room is complete, you call her back and have her redo the corner. She blushes. She apologizes. You nod once. She won't forget next time. That is how training works. Quiet repetition. Sometimes when the house is still, you find yourself lingering near the morning room. The sunlight falls just right there in late afternoon, catching the edge of the piano lid and painting it gold. No one plays it anymore. Not since the eldest daughter married and moved to Kent. You once heard her practicing scales, over and over. You listened from the hall, out of sight, imagining what it might be like to sit on that bench. You never tried. Not once. That silence too is something you've learned to hold. By evening you are back at your desk near the servant's stair. It is narrow, tucked between the kitchen and the cellar door. A table, a lamp, and your ledger. You enter the day's details in ink, careful and slow. Linen replaced, soap delivered, chambermaid warned. It's all there. Your handwriting is small and neat. You do not use adjectives, just facts. Emotion, like error, is to be avoided. The housekeeper passes by on her way to the still room. She does not stop. She glances once. You nod. She nods. It's enough. You have done your part today. At night your room is smaller than it once was. You gave up the larger space for a newer girl with back problems. No one asked you to. You simply did it. The younger maids whisper about your kindness. The older ones know it isn't kindness. It's strategy. Space given is remembered. And you are still here, after all these years, because you have made yourself impossible to remove, and easy to overlook. As you lie on your narrow bed, the ledger closed, the hallway quiet, you wonder if no one hears your voice unless it's written down. Have you really been speaking at all? There are footsteps you recognize before they round the corner. Heavier ones from the butler, always deliberate, and lighter ones from the younger maids who still move too quickly, still think rushing is more efficient than rhythm. You don't need to look up from your ledger to know who's about to pass. The house moves in loops, and after 2 decades in service, you've memorized the pattern of its breath. This morning begins with a complaint. A guest has found a crease in a tablecloth at breakfast. Not a stain, not a tear, just a crease, faint and curved perhaps from how it was folded. You are told this in a half-whisper by the parlour maid, who is near tears. You do not roll your eyes, nor do you sigh. You simply take the note, walk to the linen press yourself, pull the corresponding cloth from the clean stack, and run your hand across its edge. The crease is barely visible. Still you nod, return it to the laundry bin, and mark a replacement. That is how problems are solved here, not through noise, but through removal. You spend the next hour training the newest laundry girl. She is from the village, barely 15, nervous and wide-eyed. Her hands tremble slightly as she folds the towels, unsure of the correct sequence. You sit beside her, demonstrate slowly, smooth, fold inward, align corners, stack. You say very little, just enough. When she finally gets it right, you don't praise her, you simply move on. In this house, praise can do more damage than correction. Praise invites attention, attention invites pressure. You protect them by being silent. At midday you accompany the housekeeper on her rounds. She walks faster now, age catching her but not slowing her. You follow beside her, notebook in hand. You speak when spoken to, nod when directed. She inspects the flower arrangements, adjusts a spoon on the sideboard, and makes a comment about the third footman's posture. You write it down. When she turns away, you also make a note that the pantry shelf is sagging under the weight of improperly stacked china. You'll have the carpenter called before the week ends. You return to your desk just before the dinner service begins. The bell rings in the dining room. The guests gather. Laughter drifts down the corridor like perfume. You stay below, seated by your lamp, the sounds above you like echoes from a life you were never meant to touch. The housekeeper is upstairs now, overseeing service. The footmen are moving between courses. You are in the gap between responsibilities, waiting for the next thing to go wrong. A maid passes and stops. She's flushed, breathing fast. Mrs. Price, there's a stain on the drawing room settee. Ink, I think. The mistress noticed. You do not panic. You stand, take the cleaning solution, a cloth, and follow her. When you arrive, the guests have moved into the music room. The room is quiet. You kneel, press the solution into the fabric, and wait. You blot. You dab, slowly with patience. The ink lifts, not entirely, but enough that the pattern of the fabric masks what remains. You smooth the cushion, adjust the throw over it, and stand. Problem solved, memory disguised. After dinner you are summoned, not urgently, but formally. The housekeeper calls you into the still room. She's seated, holding a teacup. You remain standing. She tells you she may be retiring soon. Her sister in Dover has fallen ill. She needs time. She says this carefully, watching your face for any sign of ambition, or perhaps resentment. You give her neither. You nod. Of course, ma'am, you say. She waits, perhaps expecting more. You offer nothing else. When you leave, her expression is unreadable. You spend the evening going over storeroom lists. Wax for the candlesticks is running low. Soap deliveries have been irregular. The potato sack count doesn't match the kitchen's ledger. You make notes, quiet corrections, reminders for meetings. You catch things before they become things. That is your gift. You are the seam between layers, the thread that keeps it all from fraying. Your room is cooler tonight. The fire has not been lit, and you do not request it. You sit on the edge of your bed, stretching your ankles slowly, careful not to disturb the maid already asleep across the hall. You remove your apron, brush it clean, hang it by the door. You look at your hands. They are not soft anymore, not old but worn, reliable. You think about what the housekeeper said. Retirement, change, promotion perhaps, but with that more eyes, more risk, less quiet. You've built your place here like a walled garden, contained, careful, secure. To leave it would be to open something that has stayed tightly shut. And you wonder, in a world where silence was your safety, what would you risk by finally being heard? You wake earlier than usual. The silence around you denser than before. There's a heaviness to the morning, not in the weather, but in the stillness of the corridors. The lamps haven't yet been lit. The hearths are dark. The staff's quarters are quiet, not with sleep but with expectation. Word has traveled faster than the bell. The housekeeper has taken leave. She departed before dawn, quietly, without ceremony. You weren't told directly, but the absence says enough. Your steps are steady as you cross the upper landing, but inside, there's an unease.
The weight of responsibility doesn't crash down. It seeps in. Every creak of floorboard now belongs to you. Every misplaced cloth, every unswept stair, every forgotten towel, all of it must pass through your gaze, through your judgment. You do not yet have the title, but the shape of your days has changed. The kitchen maid greets you differently this morning, not just with deference, but with hesitation. She waits for instruction, uncertain if you now have the authority to give it. You nod once, say only larder inventory. By midday, she scurries off. A confirmation. The shift has begun, even if no one has said so aloud. You sit at the housekeeper's desk. For the first time in 20 years you sit in her chair. It creaks slightly under your weight. The ledger is open. Her handwriting is sharp and exacting. You flip through the pages, reading her notes, marks beside the gardener's order, a short complaint about overuse of starch in the collars, an underlined mention of soap quality declining. You know these concerns. You've heard them echoed in whispers for months. Now they're yours to manage. Mid-morning brings the butler to your door. He stands as he always does, ramrod straight, eyes unreadable, tone neutral. The mistress asks if the guest rooms will be ready by tomorrow evening. You meet his gaze and nod. They will, no hesitation. He nods once and leaves. You sit very still afterward, the echo of that brief exchange louder than any bell. You walk the halls more deliberately now, not as an observer, but as a steward. You check the silver store, count the linens, inspect the footman's polish on the hallway lamps. The parlour maid has left streaks on the drawing-room mirror. You call her over, hand her a fresh cloth, and watch as she redoes it. You don't speak harshly. You don't need to. Your silence is no longer quiet. It has become a language. By afternoon, the staff looks at you differently, not quite with fear, but with awareness. You have always been present, but now you are seen. A strange reversal. You find yourself wishing for the older rhythms, where you could correct from the edges, and disappear again. Now everything waits for your nod. In the still room you organize the medicinal cabinet. It hasn't been inventoried in weeks. You find expired tinctures, an old jar of liniment, and a letter from the previous housekeeper tucked behind the shelves. It's addressed to no one, just a note to herself, scribbled on the back of a tea order. It all runs smoother when no one knows how much we hold back. You fold it, place it in your apron, and say nothing. Evening descends quickly in autumn. You light the hallway lamps yourself, part tradition, part ritual, one by one, flame by flame, until the corridor glows with soft amber light. The house exhales. The staff begins their evening routines. You inspect each task, speak when necessary, correct with restraint. A maid asks if she may be excused early. Her mother is ill. You approve it. Quietly, without fuss. She weeps when you turn away, though you do not see it. In your quarters, now slightly larger than before, you sit at a writing desk. You've never used it. The drawers are empty. You open one and place the folded letter inside. A new ledger sits before you, blank, yours to fill. You stare at the first page, pen in hand. The temptation to write what you truly think, truly feel, curls around your fingers. But instead, you begin with the familiar date, temperature, linen count, just as before. Nothing dramatic, only facts. That's how houses survive, by details, not declarations. And yet, as you place the pen down, you feel something shift, a quiet rebellion, not of noise but of presence. You are no longer beneath the title. You are its shape, its breath, its rhythm, and you wonder if silence has been your strength for so long. What will it mean to finally speak through decisions, instead of footsteps?
Before the sun even considers rising, the kitchen is already awake. You feel it before you see it. The slow hum of iron cooling from the night before, the faint smell of damp coal and stale bread, the tick of the great wall clock above the pantry door. It is always like this. You are the kitchen maid, and this space is both your battlefield and your belonging. The scullery girl will arrive soon, but for now it's just you and the stillness before the chaos. You begin with the range. The ashes from yesterday's fires lie in a soft pile beneath the grate, still warm if you reach deep enough. You sweep them out carefully, not because anyone is watching, but because Cook will know. She notices everything. The faintest smear on a pot handle, the curl of an unpolished spoon, the hesitation in your step when the pudding doesn't set. You have worked under her for nearly 2 years now, and though she rarely speaks your name, you know when you've pleased her or when you haven't. The kitchen is the only room in the house where noise is expected. Noise, in fact, is how it breathes. Pots clattering, knives chopping, the sizzle of meat hitting the hot pan, the bellows of Cook echoing over the low rumble of the oven. And yet, in these early hours, it is quiet, peaceful. In its own way, you enjoy the minutes before the deliveries arrive, before the shouting starts, before someone inevitably breaks a plate or forgets to skim the stock. Your first job is bread. You knead the dough with hands already tired from yesterday, dusting the table with flour like snow over worn wood. You learned early that dough has moods. Rush it and it resists. Ignore it and it sours. The warmth of the room, the patience in your fingers, the exact angle of your palm, all of it matters. You hum as you work, softly, something wordless and old. You think perhaps your mother sang it once. By the time the others arrive, the rhythm has begun. The scullery maid lights the second stove. The butcher's boy arrives with the meat, wrapped in thick paper, still slick with cold. You weigh the cuts, mark them in the ledger, note the short weight of the lamb without saying a word. Cook will raise it later. You've learned it's not your place to speak too soon. Luncheon must begin almost as soon as breakfast ends. There is no true pause. Trays come and go. Dishes pile faster than they're washed. The heat grows heavier by the hour, pressing against the stone walls, collecting in your cap. You've long since stopped wiping your forehead. There's no point. You stir the gravy with one hand and cradle a hot tray with the other, moving in tight circles like a dancer in a room too small for steps. You steal bites where you can, a sliver of apple, a crust from the pudding tin, a spoonful of cream left cooling near the hearth. These are not meals, they are moments. You will not eat properly until the house does, and even then likely after. Cook shouts for more herbs. You run to the still room, careful not to spill the peppercorns you're already holding. On the way back, you pass the footmen gathered near the wine cellar. They don't notice you. They never do. You are part of the kitchen, sweating, hurrying, invisible. Midday light never quite reaches this room. Even when the sun is high, it filters through in streaks between pantry doors, catching the dust and smoke in thin golden lines. You breathe through it. You move through it. There is no choice. By now your apron is stained. Your sleeves are damp. Your voice half lost to the steam. There are no clocks here that chime for you. Only the changing orders. Lamb to the oven. Carrots to the pot. Water to boil. Custard to chill. You carry it all in your head. Cook's voice. The orders of the day, the guest preferences, the sounds that mean something's burning. You cannot afford to forget. Evening draws near, but the pace does not slow. Dinner is more precise, more ornate. Silver trays, layered sauces, the exact garnish on each plate. Cook's hands move like weapons. Quick, sharp, absolute. You try to match her without drawing attention. She doesn't want a helper, she wants an extension of herself. You are learning to become that. When the last dish is carried out, you do not rest. There is cleaning, always more cleaning. The oven scraped, the knives washed, the pantry swept. You mop the tiles with your back aching, and your eyes half closed. The others drift away one by one. Cook retreats to her small room near the back door, shutting it without a word. The scullery girl yawns her way toward the stairs, but you stay. The embers must be banked, the pans must be hung, tomorrow must be prepared for, or it will fail before it begins. The house sleeps above you, but here the air still hums. The smell of onions lingers in the curtains. A beetle scuttles across the flour sack. The table is finally cleared, and as you sit for the first time in 17 hours, your apron folded in your lap, and your hands raw from water and heat, you ask yourself, if the kitchen never sleeps, how long can you survive by dreaming only between tasks? By morning the heat from the range has barely faded, and the scent of last night's roasting joint still lingers near the ceiling, clinging to the wooden beams like a memory no one dares wipe clean. You pull on your apron again, the same one from yesterday. There's no time for laundry yet, and tie it tightly, ignoring the stiffened corners and the faint imprint of flour near the hem. The kitchen waits for no one, not even you. The scullery maid is late. You notice immediately, not by her absence but by the coldness of the wash basin, and the silence where the clatter of pans should be. You do not scold her. That's cook's domain. You simply begin in her place, plunging your arms into the water, elbow deep in yesterday's grease, and a pot so blackened it might never shine again. You know this won't be forgotten, nor will it be praised. By the time she arrives, breathless and apologetic, cook is already shouting, not about the lateness, though she'll mention it later, but about the poultry. It arrived too small, she says, too thin. She flings the package onto the counter where you're slicing onions, and the raw weight of it hits hard, splashing a bit of juice onto your sleeve. You say nothing. You keep chopping. You've learned to blink through the sting. Soon the deliveries come in waves. Bread, butter, cream, all must be weighed, checked, noted. You move from bench to ledger to cellar and back, hands full, eyes sharp, mind flickering between numbers and tasks. A missed item is a sin, an overcharge is war. Cook expects you to catch what others miss. Today is special. There's a luncheon for the local vicar and his guests. That means extra desserts, delicate sandwiches, and an array of dishes that must be finished precisely on time. The vicar's wife dislikes cloves. One guest is vegetarian. Another prefers white meat only. These details were whispered to cook days ago, and now she tests your memory of them without warning. You recite each correctly. She does not nod. She does not need to. By midday the kitchen has no air left. The ovens are roaring, kettles screaming, and the walls slick with heat. Your back aches, your blouse clings to your spine, and you haven't sat down in hours. The scullery girl tries to mop the floor, but the grease spreads underfoot faster than she can wipe. You steady her when she slips, but she barely notices. Her eyes are glazed. You see yourself in her, younger, newer, still hoping to be seen. The luncheon trays go up precisely at 1. You help assemble them, wiping plates between tasks, adjusting garnishes with burnt fingers. One tray wobbles as the footman lifts it. You catch the corner just in time. No one sees. No one ever sees. After the trays are gone, there's a breath barely won. You lean against the pantry door, heart racing, and let your eyes close for 3 seconds. 4, 5. Cook's voice calls your name. You're needed again. The sauce has split. You must start over. Dinner prep begins before tea has even been served. There's lamb to trim, greens to wash, puddings to steam. You check the spice tins. The nutmeg is low. You make a note. You check the jam jars. One is crusted over at the rim. You replace it without mention. At dusk the footman returns with the empty trays. One plate has been scraped clean, another barely touched. You wonder who ate what, who complained, who noticed the effort behind the crust of that tart. but the answers don't matter. You scrape the remnants into the waste bin and return to your station. Cook is quieter in the evening, tired but not softened. She chops with purpose, hums without tune. You speak less as well. There is no energy left for anything but the rhythm of routine. Cut, stir, wipe, repeat. It is muscle memory now. By nightfall, the kitchen thins out. The scullery girl retires early, sent upstairs after dropping a jar. You stay. There is still the bread for morning, still the jelly to be poured, still the stove to be blacked. You move through the room, like a shadow, cleaning what must be cleaned, setting what must be set. At last the silence settles. You sit on the wooden stool near the range, wrap your shawl tight, and hold your hands near the last flicker of heat. Your fingers are swollen, your feet pulsing. The bread is rising slowly in its bowl. You watch it rise. It feels like a small kind of hope. And you ask yourself, if this kitchen never rests, will you ever learn how to live outside of it? Or will you only exist in steam and motion until your name fades like the smell of last night's stew? It is long past midnight when you finally find yourself alone in the kitchen. The last of the lanterns have been snuffed upstairs, and only a dull glow from the banked embers in the range lights the space around you. You are not meant to be here now. This is no longer your shift, but habit lingers where duty once stood, and tonight your body doesn't know how to be still. You sit at the long scrubbed table, the one where the younger maids sometimes sneak pieces of pie crust, where cook once set down a pot so hard it cracked the wood. The gouge is still there. You trace it with your fingertip, feeling the place where heat and force once left a permanent mark. There are many such marks in this room, on the floor, the counters, your skin. The bread you set earlier is done rising. You lift the cloth gently, the way you once saw cook do when she thought no one was watching. The dough has puffed, soft and warm. You knock it back with practiced hands, reshape it, lay it in the tin. No one has asked for morning bread, but you cannot sleep, knowing it's not ready. The kitchen's silence is unfamiliar, and you fill it with motion. You remember a time when you thought this job would be a step, one of many, a temporary place on the way to something better. You'd imagined saving your wages, moving to the city, maybe working in a small shop where the windows let in light, and no one raised their voice at you before noon. But the days blurred, weeks became seasons, the stairs grew steeper, your hands tougher, and somehow the kitchen grew around you, like walls you never noticed rising. The room creaks in its sleep, the high windows rattle faintly with the wind. Somewhere above you, a door clicks closed. You are not afraid. The house at night is different, yes, but it's not strange to you. You know its noises, its sighs, the way it settles itself before dawn. You place the bread near the embers, cover it again, and begin cleaning the countertop. Not because it's dirty, but because stillness makes you nervous. Every corner must be set, every knife placed in its proper slot. Cook will notice if one blade is turned the wrong way. She won't say it outright, but she'll pause, glance, and then you'll know. You've come to read those silences better than any words. You pause by the pantry and run a mental inventory. Jam jars, flour sacks, dried herbs. You know what's low and what's spoiled. You'll reorder in the morning. The delivery boys call you quiet girl, though you're neither especially young nor silent. You just don't waste your voice. It has been spent already on years of yes ma'am, and right away miss. Sometimes when the house is still like this, you wonder who will replace you when you are too slow, too stiff, too old. You've seen it happen to others. A limp noticed, a mistake made, a younger girl suddenly introduced, a soft farewell said behind closed doors. You think you'll know when your time is coming, but you don't know if you'll fight it or welcome the release. The clock ticks on. Soon the scullery maid will rise, bleary-eyed and shivering. She'll find the bread ready and the counters clean. She won't know who did it. She might assume it was cook, or forget to ask altogether.
That's always. That's how kitchens work. What matters is done long before anyone thinks to say thank you. You move to the back doors and open it just a crack. The night air hits your skin, cold and damp, and you breathe it in like something sacred. There are no stars tonight, only a thick sky and the scent of wet leaves. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog barks once and then goes quiet again. You close the door slowly and return to the walls. As you sit once more, watching the pale edge of dawn begin to press against the window panes, you wonder if you are the one who wakes the kitchen, who keeps it from ever sleeping. Then when, if ever, will someone come to wake you?
The bellboard hangs high on the wall in the servants' hallway, just above eye level, framed in wood darkened by time and smoke. Each brass-rimmed label corresponds to a room upstairs: drawing room, morning room, master's study, blue bedroom, guest quarters, nursery. Beneath every label is a narrow slot, and within each slot a small hanging bell, perfectly balanced. At first glance, it looks like a quiet thing, still harmless. But the moment one bell swings, even slightly, everything changes. You live by those bells, not by the hour, not by the season, not by your own rhythm. The bells decide who moves, who runs, who is blamed. They are your masters, and their command is absolute. You learnt this on your first day in service, when you stood too long in the corridor and didn't hear the dining room bell ring. It was only silent for 7 seconds, but 7 was too many. The butler heard it, so did the mistress. She asked later why it had taken so long. You had no answer. You learnt then what it meant to be late without ever knowing the time. You are the hallway maid now, assigned to respond when the bell rings from any of the main rooms. You carry no tray, no letters, no linen. You carry the space between silence and movement. When the bell jumps, you jump too. Even in your sleep, you think you hear them. Even on your day off, if there is one, you flinch. When a teacup is placed too firmly on a table, a sound like a bell, you look up. There is no pattern, no kindness in the order of their calling. Sometimes it's the same room twice in 10 minutes. Sometimes 3 bells go off at once. Sometimes none at all, which is worse, because you cannot relax. A silent bellboard is only resting to ring again. You spend most of your day in the central corridor, stationed by the board with its wires leading upward like nerves into the bones of the house. You've traced them with your eyes, imagined their path behind walls, beneath floorboards, above ceilings. You've imagined the tremble of a finger pressing the button upstairs, and the delicate swing of the bell down here, as if the walls themselves whisper your name. The footmen pass you often, arms full of logs or trays or books. They nod, sometimes. The housemaids glide through, nodding more often. You are not beneath them, not quite, but you are alone in this duty. The bell waits only for you. You are allowed to sit on a low stool, just beneath the board, but you rarely do. The moment you do, a bell will ring, and you'll have to rise too quickly, and your knees will ache for the rest of the day. So you stand, or lean, or pace in slow arcs, eyes flicking up to the brass circles, waiting. Today the green bedroom bell rings first. You respond with quiet speed, step soft against the runner. A lady's maid answers the door. Hot water, she says flatly, not even opening the door fully. You nod and retreat. Downstairs again, fetch the jug, upstairs once more. By the time you return, she's gone. You set the water by the door. No one thanks you. That too is part of it. An hour passes. Then 2 bells ring, master's study and the morning room. You choose the study first, knowing the mistress will be in the morning room, and she's slower to temper than he is. You deliver the message he requests, then dash toward the other room. The mistress is already irritated. Did you not hear the bell? She asks. You bow slightly. I did, ma'am. She doesn't respond. The pause is enough to brand your chest with shame. The bell for the nursery rarely rings. But when it does, it means something is wrong. A fever, a fall, a child refusing to eat. Today it rings at dusk. You run faster. The nursemaid's hands are full of laundry. Fetch more cloths, she snaps. The little one's made a mess again. You run, you fetch, you return. You hold the cloths out. She doesn't take them. Leave them there, she says, and turns away. After dark, the bells continue. The guest room needs more coal. The parlor wants candles. Someone forgot the wine. You carry things in silence. Respond to needs that aren't yours. Clean up messes you didn't make. All because of that one clear sound. A bell ringing in a still hallway. You think sometimes of the old days, before electricity, before the wires. You wonder what it was like then. Did maids carry letters by hand? Did they knock on doors to ask what was needed? There must have been more speaking, more faces. Now the bell speaks for them, and they never have to see you. As the night grows still again, you return to your stool. Your shift is nearly over. The corridor is dark. The house sleeps above you. Doors closed, candles out. The bellboard is quiet, but you don't trust it. You never trust it. And you wonder, in a life where every movement is summoned by sound, who are you in the silence, between the bells? You wake before the sun again, though it scarcely feels like you ever truly slept. Your eyes open to the same grey sliver of dawn, peeking through the attic curtain, and already your ears are tuned for it. Not the rooster, not the scullery bucket, not the hiss of coal, but the first bell. Even here, 3 floors below the family rooms, it seems to echo through your bones before it ever rings. Your uniform is already folded by your cot. You rise quietly, so as not to wake the under housemaid beside you. She has the luxury of another half hour. You don't. By the time you lace your shoes and fasten your cap, your hands are moving ahead of your thoughts. Your body knows the drill. You wash your face, pin your collar, and descend the narrow stairs with barely a sound. The bell hasn't rung yet, but you know it's coming. The corridor where the bellboard hangs is still and dimly lit. You light the oil lamp mounted beside it, watching the brass plates glint to life in the soft flicker. They are clean because you keep them clean. You polish them when no one is looking, not because anyone asked you to, but because you hate the idea of dirt near something that has such power over your day. You think of the bells as voices, distant ones, blunt ones, needy ones. The master's study bell is curt, insistent, rarely followed by pleasantries. The mistress's morning room bell rings, with a kind of rhythm, always at the same time, always for the same things. The guest rooms vary. Some ring too often, others not at all. The worst are the ones that chime unpredictably. The blue bedroom, the upstairs library. They jolt you without reason, call you into spaces you don't belong, and often need nothing more than a door closed or a question relayed. The first bell of the day comes from the breakfast room. You feel it just before it swings. You step away from the wall, smooth your apron, and head upstairs. It is always tea. It is always urgent. You nod to the footman as you pass. He's adjusting the silver. You walk faster, not out of panic, but out of habit. You arrive at the door, wait precisely 2 seconds, then knock once. Softly, enter comes the voice. You step in, bow, receive the request, and vanish before your name is needed. When you return to the corridor, the second bell rings, drawing room, and then another green bedroom. You watch the 2 bells sway like leaves in wind. You prioritize. You respond. You run. The rest of your morning unfolds in this pattern. Bell, corridor, stairs, task, corridor, again. You take no notes. Your memory is your ledger. There is never enough time to explain. The family rarely sees your face, and when they do, they rarely make eye contact. The lady of the house once asked where you were from. You told her. She didn't reply. She turned to her dog and asked what it wanted for lunch. The cook later told you not to offer information, unless asked twice. You nodded. You understood. By midday your legs ache. Your hands sting from carrying coal scuttles and fetching linens. You ate standing up. Cold toast,
A half cup of tea, swallowed too quickly to taste. You miss meals more often than not. The bell always seems to ring when your fingers reach for the bread. In the early afternoon, there's a lull. You sit briefly, barely breathing, watching the brass bells above you. You count them. 12 active rooms today, 3 more due to be prepared. You catch yourself hoping none of them ring for the next few minutes. You scold yourself for the thought. Hope is a dangerous indulgence here. Then a sharp clang. Guest room 3. You know that sound, sharp and impatient. You rise before the bell settles. Upstairs, the guest requests a note be delivered to the master. You nod, accept the envelope, and descend again. You carry words between people who never speak directly. You are the breath between sentences, the silence between commands. Later the nursery bell rings. A rare event. You climb the stairs faster than usual. The nursemaid is flustered. The child has been sick. Sheets need changing. She's dropped a bottle. You help without being asked, picking up the glass, soaking the cloth, stripping the bed. You leave just before the governess arrives. Unseen as always. Evening settles slowly. The corridor grows cooler. The oil lamp flickers lower. You check the board again. No bells. Not yet. You polish the base of the frame with your sleeve. You listen. The silence is thick. Your shift ends when the final tray is cleared. But you don't leave. You wait 5 more minutes, just in case. Then 10. Then finally, you step away. The board stays still. The hallway exhales. As you climb the stairs to your room, the sound of your own breath surprises you. The stillness hums in your ears. You press your hand to your chest, half expecting to hear a bell ringing there too. And you wonder if you disappeared tomorrow, would the bells still ring, or would the house forget to call for what it no longer believes it has lost? You start the final day of the week, with a weight in your shoulders that no sleep has lifted. The rain has soaked the roof overnight, and now it drums faintly above the servants' corridor, like the ticking of a second, invisible bell. You dress in silence, lacing your shoes with hands that move more from memory than will. The other maids are still asleep. Their time hasn't come yet. Yours always begins first. The bellboard greets you the way it always does, aloof, expectant, unreadable. You light the corridor lamp, adjust your apron, and take your post beneath it. The first bell rings before your shift officially begins. Guest room 2. You go without hesitation, without a thought. The maid there is unwell, and her duties have quietly fallen to you for the last 2 days. No one has said it outright. They don't need to. The bell doesn't care who answers, only that someone does. You bring the tray, straighten the blanket, adjust the lamp. The guest nods at you. No smile, no thanks, just a nod, the same one given to a horse that stands still too long, or a child who does something passable. You leave quickly, hands already thinking of the next task, eyes watching for the next flicker of brass behind you. The bells ring steadily throughout the day. Blue bedroom, library, morning room. You come to know their tone so well that you can tell who pressed the buzzer by how the bell swings. The mistress taps lightly. The master jabs. One of the guests presses twice without meaning to, and the bell twitches in a panicked apologetic stutter. You deliver messages. You refill jugs. You fetch keys, letters, shawls and gloves. Once you're asked to help locate a missing brooch, believed to be lost somewhere between the dining room and the parlor. You search for nearly 40 minutes. The bell rings again before you've finished. You abandon the search. Later you find it beneath the edge of a carpet, glinting like a dropped coin. You leave it on the lady's writing desk without note. You hear nothing more of it. By late afternoon, your legs feel hollow. The soles of your shoes have worn thin in places. The padding beneath your toes is bruised from the marble stair. You've counted those stairs without meaning to 41 from the cellar to the 2nd floor. You know exactly where the step creaks on the turn. You skip it automatically now. You pause once in the narrow passage behind the dining hall, just long enough to sip water from a small tin cup you keep hidden behind the pantry door. It's not forbidden, just discouraged. You drink fast, wipe your mouth and return. The bell rings before you reach your stool. Drawing room. You go. Evening descends like a slow curtain. The lamps are lit, the fires stoked. Guests begin to gather in the main rooms, and the bells grow louder, more frequent, more urgent. Someone wants a fresh cushion, another wants the fire stirred, a coat moved, the wine opened. You pass between rooms like a stitch through cloth, keeping the seams of the household from tearing. No one sees the thread, only the pattern. The butler passes you once. He does not speak but raises an eyebrow at your pace. You slow slightly. He nods once. You have never been scolded by him, nor praised. You don't know which would be worse. The last bell rings well after midnight. Guest room full. A request for extra water. You deliver it without a word, then descend the stairs one last time. Your knees crack slightly as you reach the bottom. You place the jug back on its shelf, rinse the tray, and return to the corridor. The board is still now. No more calls, no more flickers. You stare up at it for a long time, watching the curve of each brass plate, memorizing the dust that has gathered at the top corners. You wipe it clean. You always do. As you climb the stairs to your room, the quiet presses close. The walls seem to whisper with the memory of bells. You lie down without undressing. You stare at the ceiling, feeling the echo in your ears. And you wonder if the bells were to stop forever. If silence finally settled over this house, would you remember who you were before they started ringing?
You wake before your master. As always. Not because you're required to. Not exactly. But because you must. The sun hasn't risen yet, but already your tasks unfold in your mind like a well-thumbed manual. Slippers by the bed, hot water for shaving, clothes brushed, collar stiffened, shoes buffed to a mirror's edge. You move through it with the calm of repetition, though inside you know that the smallest mistake, an unbuttoned cuff, a wrinkle at the hem, can ripple through the day in ways no one else ever sees. Not a servant, not a footman, not a groom, a valet. It sounds finer than it feels. You are the one who dresses him, shaves him, manages his wardrobe, polishes his walking stick, and sees to the details that men like him are never meant to think about. Your name is almost never used. He calls you man or yes you. But your hands know every shape of his life. You know which shoes he wears when he expects bad news, which tie he favors when he wants to impress a guest, which side of his face he shaves too close when he's distracted. You know more than you're ever meant to say. Today is a Tuesday, and that means riding. His breeches must be brushed, boots gleamed, crop laid precisely on the bench by the west-facing window. You begin with the boots. They're worn along the instep. He presses too hard when he mounts. You've told no one. You simply polish slower there, fill the creases with balm. You buff until the leather looks almost wet with shine. He never notices. That's how you know you've done it right. In his dressing room, the morning light filters through pale curtains, casting long shadows over the rug. You lay out his waistcoat, grey today, subtle check pattern. He'll complain about the collar, as he always does, but he'll wear it. You've already pre-tied the cravat just so. You place it on the oak dressing stand, alongside the silver-backed brushes. Everything has a place. Nothing should need explanation. When he enters, you step back, quiet and still. He doesn't greet you, just nods slightly as he walks past, removing his nightshirt and holding it out without turning. You take it wordlessly, fold it with practiced ease, and begin to assist with his shirt buttons. You've done this 100 times, 1,000. He adjusts the cuffs. You fix them. He checks his pocket watch. You note the time, quietly adjusting your mental clock to the pace of his day. He asks for his black riding gloves, not the brown ones. You retrieve them without needing to look. They're in the third drawer, folded beneath his hat pins. You never forget. That's your duty, not just to serve, but to remember what must be remembered, and forget what should never have been seen. You accompany him to the stables. You don't ride. You wait by the fence, arms behind your back, watching for the moment he might dismount and toss you the reins. He does so with barely a glance. You catch them nod, and lead the horse back yourself. Later you'll brush it down in the absence of a groom who's fallen ill. It's not your job, but it will reflect on you if it's done poorly. Back inside, you clean the boots again, not because he asked, but because they show dust now, and someone might notice. You handle his clothes with the reverence others reserve for relics. You mend the button on his cuff, the thread invisible to all but you. You iron the creases from his lapel, where his coat pinched wrong in the saddle. He won't know, but someone might. You hear the staff whisper sometimes. He's more like a shadow than a man, they say. Doesn't speak unless spoken to. Doesn't blink unless the master does. They're not wrong. You've made yourself an echo of someone else's presence, because that's what's required. A valet is not a personality. He is precision. He is discretion. He is absence that serves a function. In the afternoon, he asks for his letter-writing paper. You bring it before he finishes the sentence. He pauses, perhaps surprised, perhaps not. You do not linger to see. You step back into the hallway and wait. Later you hear him in his study, pacing. The door is closed, but you can hear the footsteps. You know that pattern. It means something is wrong. You prepare his evening coat accordingly, the softer one. Fewer seams, less restrictive. He'll want to feel like he's not being strangled. Dinner is a quiet affair. You wait outside the dining room. If he needs his gloves, his snuff box, his handkerchief, you are there. A ghost in the corridor, an outline drawn in silence. At night you lay out his nightshirt. You hang his clothes to air. You polish the silver collar stays. You brush the lint from his overcoat, even though he won't wear it again until Thursday. Then you return to your own room, smaller than his dressing closet. You sit on your cot, remove your shoes, stretch your fingers. They ache, not from labor, but from restraint. You light your candle, stare at the wall, and listen to the silence where your thoughts used to be. And you wonder if your life is the outline of another man's. What part of you still belongs to yourself at all? The morning begins again, before the house stirs, and you are already awake, sitting on the edge of your bed, with one sock on, and one hand resting lightly on your knee. It's not the kind of waking that comes with a stretch or a yawn. It's the kind that arrives quietly, like a memory returning uninvited. You don't reach for a clock. You've never needed one. The rhythm of your master's life is its own clock, and your mind has long since been trained to match it, minute for minute. Today he will travel. That means packing. You prepare his valise before he's even mentioned it. 2 shirts, one stiff, one soft, a spare waistcoat, a pair of polished boots wrapped in cloth to protect the shine. You fold his handkerchiefs in thirds, the way he prefers, and place his razor and comb in the inner pocket where he expects to find them. You leave nothing to chance. He is a man who forgets easily, but remembers flaws. When he finally calls, you are already outside his door. He doesn't look at you as you enter. He gestures toward the wardrobe and begins speaking about weather forecasts and train schedules, most of which you already know. You nod once, twice, and begin helping him dress shirt, cravat, waistcoat, coat. He adjusts his collar with a touch too much force. His mood is off. You feel it more than see it. He asks if his gloves have been mended. You answer yes. You mended them yourself 2 nights ago, under a dim lamp with thread you matched to the original stitch. You do not tell him that you pricked your thumb doing it. You do not show him the tiny red dot that stained the inside cuff. You washed it out before he would ever notice. Downstairs, the household prepares for departure. A footman loads the luggage. The butler confirms the carriage. You remain near your master's side, a step behind, a presence he does not see until he needs something. He pats his pockets, looking for his watch. You hand it to him before he asks. He glances at you briefly. There's no gratitude, but no displeasure either. That in your world is enough. At the train station, you follow him to the platform. You carry his umbrella, though it isn't raining. You carry his newspaper, though he won't read it. You carry his silence, because it is heavier than all the rest. He boards without turning. The train begins to move. You remain on the platform, standing in place until the last of the carriages disappears. Only then do you breathe fully. For the first time today, you are not responsible for his every crease, every cuff, every word. Back at the house, you retreat to the dressing room. You begin tidying what he's left behind. A half-folded letter, the collar he discarded, the scent of his shaving soap still hanging in the air. You place the unused tie back on the rack. You polish the brass on the wardrobe handles. You realign his shoes beneath the bed. You work without rush. There is no audience now, no bell waiting to be answered. But your hands don't know how to stop. In the afternoon, you visit the tailor's room. A new coat is being altered. You inspect it yourself, not out of vanity, but necessity. You check the length of the sleeve, the stitching at the shoulder. You remember how last time, the lining bunched near the seam, and the master noticed. You swore it wouldn't happen again. The tailor doesn't speak much. You're not a client, but he listens when you point. That too is power of a kind. Later the house feels oddly still, without the constant calls, the corrections, the closeness. You are left with yourself, and that, oddly, is more difficult to manage. You sit at your small desk, open your ledger of tasks, and stare at a blank line. For the first time in months, there is nothing urgent, no coat to press, no cufflink to polish. You feel the weight of your own hands. You pull out the small book you keep hidden in the bottom drawer. Not a diary, just a list of everything you do that no one sees. Wrist-stitched left glove, noticed worn collar, adjusted walking stick cap, repaired belt loop. It's a record of your life's invisible labor. You don't know why you keep it, only that someone should remember. When the master returns tomorrow, the house will shift again. You will resume your place beside him, your silence stitched into every seam of his clothing. He will expect his room as he left it, his coat freshly aired, his brush bristles firm. You will give it to him, without hesitation, as you always have. But tonight, in this rare moment between presence and expectation, you close the list and blow out the lamp. You lie back on your narrow bed and stare into the dark, and you wonder if no one ever asks who kept him whole. How long can you keep yourself from coming undone? The master returns before dawn, earlier than expected. You are already half-dressed, lacing your shoes in the cold morning dim, when the sound of the carriage wheels crunches into the gravel drive. You don't rush. You've learned the value of appearing unflustered. A valet must always seem as if he was ready long before the doorbell rang. You greet him in the entryway with quiet precision. His coat is already off, before he reaches the final stair, and he hands it to you without breaking stride. You catch a whiff of tobacco, and damp wool, and something else, fatigue masked by cologne. His gloves are in his other hand. You take those too. Hot water, he mutters. And the navy suit. He has no idea that the navy suit has already been pressed, hung, inspected, and repaired. You noticed a fray along the trouser hem last week, and re-stitched it before the thread had a chance to snap. You've even refreshed the lavender sachet in the breast pocket. You say nothing. You simply incline your head, and step away to prepare it. The dressing room feels smaller today, or perhaps it's the weight of his silence that presses against the walls. He shaves slowly, hands less steady than usual. You offer the warm towel before he asks, and he holds it over his face for a full minute, as if hoping to erase something. He hasn't told you what happened during his trip. He never does, but you can read it in the way he stares at his boots before putting them on, in how he buttoned his waistcoat unevenly, in how he forgot his pocket watch, until you placed it gently on the stand beside him. Later that morning,
He meets with guests in the study. You wait in the hallway, close enough to hear but never listen. Your job is not to eavesdrop. Your job is to be present, invisible, prepared. You adjust the curtain by the window. It's half an inch off center. No one else would notice. But the light falls strangely when it's wrong, and he's always more irritable when the sun hits his desk at the wrong angle. When the guests leave, he says nothing to you. Just removes his coat, leaves it draped carelessly over the chair, and walks out of the room. You collect the coat, brush it clean, and hang it properly. You realign the chair. You replace the ink bottle on the desk that he nudged askew. You do these things because it's your duty, but also because this room, this house, his world must remain intact even when he isn't. Afternoon brings a sudden rush. A letter to deliver, a dinner to prepare for, a collar he decides he hates. You offer him 3 alternatives. He chooses one without acknowledging your effort. You assist with his tie. He flinches when you touch his shoulder. It's sore, perhaps from riding, perhaps from something else. You file it away. You'll avoid that side next time. At dinner he drinks too much, just enough to loosen the edge of his voice. You've been with me how long now? He asks between sips, not looking at you. 7 years, sir. You reply. 7, he repeats, as if the number surprises him. He sets down the glass. And I still don't know your favorite color. You don't answer. He doesn't wait for one. The conversation shifts. You refill the glass. You remove the empty plate. You are forgotten again before you've fully vanished from the room. That night, as he retires, you help him undress. He speaks less than usual. You fold each garment carefully. When he finally says goodnight, it is almost an afterthought. Back in your quarters, you sit in the dark for a long while. You think about his question, not the color itself, but the fact that he asked. You think about how many of his secrets you've held in your hands. Letters burned before they were read, notes never delivered, a ring returned to a drawer. You have been his mirror, his wall, his silence, but never, not once, his memory. You remove your own shoes slowly, fingers aching. You light the candle, pull out the small notebook from beneath your cot, and write the day's quiet events. Not for record, not for revenge, just to prove you existed between his waking and sleeping. And as you blow out the flame, you wonder if loyalty means erasing yourself for someone else's comfort. Is there ever a moment when you get to return to the shape you once were?